Hello and welcome to our viewers in the United States and indeed all around the world. I'm Michael Holmes coming to you live from Orlando, Florida.
And I'm Isa Suarez coming to you live from Miami, where the clock has just struck midnight. Thank you very much for joining us.
And hurricane-force wind gusts are now striking the Florida Keys as Hurricane Irma moves north towards this state. The storm a Category 3 at the moment, but it is expected to regain strength as it crosses open water, which is very warm water, between Cuba and Florida. That warm water will feed a storm like this. Its path has shifted slightly west. That puts Florida's Gulf Coast on high alert. Many people from Naples up to Tampa are now seeking shelter from the storm surge that is expected to follow and could be disastrous, especially for a city like Tampa. And fleets of utility trucks have been mobilized to deal with power outages, which now affect almost 200,000 customers. All right, let's get right to CNN meteorologist Karen McGuinness. Karen, tell us about where Irma is now, where it's headed. I know that its latest track is extremely worrying to Tampa, Naples, and places like that along that west coast.
It is, for a variety of reasons. We have talked about that upper right quadrant that is so crucial. That is an area that is going to pull that water in off of the open waters. It's also an area that's very dynamic, meaning they could see the potential for tornadoes. And in fact, we've had numerous reports of funnel clouds, tornadoes that have been reported. And as I mentioned, it's very dynamic. But as we start to see some of these bands move on in across South Florida, they have been gusty now. They produce some brief heavy rainfall. About 200,000 people without power with the system now. Here's Ishan. It has just pulled away from the coast of Cuba. But let's go ahead and show you some other information, and it becomes quite compelling. This has been one fickle hurricane. Without a doubt. If you remember, about a week or so ago, we were talking about maybe landfall right around Miami. And then those computer models were kind of dividing it between the East Coast and the West Coast. Here are some of the current wind gusts. 36-mile-per-hour wind being reported in Miami. You go further to the north on the west side, Punta Gorda reporting 23-mile-per-hour sustained winds with gusts around 32. So what can we expect? There was a shift from our last update from the National Hurricane Center. If you remember, we were looking at something that perhaps would affect the Everglades and just kind of ride right along the coast. But now there are indications that this is going to pull away from the coast just a little bit more. You can see kind of this in the cone. So maybe 15 miles offshore for a while, that is, until it starts to jut out here, right around the Fort Myers, maybe the Sarasota area. But this is going to be inundating these coastal regions with perhaps 10 to 15 feet of water, which is hard to wrap your mind around, but they are in the worst possible position. If it looks like Irma is just kind of hugging the coast, they are going to be on the side that is, as I've mentioned, the most dynamic. As it makes its way towards the Bend area in Florida, perhaps being downgraded maybe to a Category 1. But until then, we're a very strong Category 3. The water temperatures across this region are approaching 90 degrees. That's the kind of energy that hurricanes like this feed off of. You may remember, as it was interacting with the Turks and Caicos and the Bahamas, that we saw it just kind of gradually lose a little bit of its energy. But no, not now. Now we're pulling out towards the Gulf and in this purple shaded area from just south of Fort Myers all the way to the Everglades. That's what we're seeing for the potential for storm surge of 10 to 15 feet. Want to mention a couple of specific things for you. First of all, they tweeted out, Broward County Sheriff's Department said that now that the wind is gusting over 45 miles an hour, they are pulling their deputies off the road. They are beginning to do that already because it affects how they are going to be able to do their job. Also, from the FEMA administrator, he spoke with CNN's Renee Marsh. He said that there could be 3 million people that are without power as a storm affects this region. Asked a little bit more, could it possibly be more than that? And he said, yes, it would be hard to speculate. There could be as many as 5 million people without power. Now, imagine that. When we were talking about why you probably need to leave, because there's Category 5 hurricane, maybe Category 4 that's going to be making landfall. Now we've got a Category 3. There's not a lot of gas to talk about. Maybe there would be damage to the place where you're seeking some security, your home. Perhaps you're near the coast, so you have the storm surge to worry about. Maybe you could see the potential for 10, 12 inches of rainfall, maybe some isolated heavier amounts. Maybe you're in the quadrant where there is tornadic activity, and certainly there is a tornado watch out from Fort Lauderdale towards Miami and into the Florida Keys over through the Everglades. So the impacts are tremendous, and you don't have to have a Category 5 hurricane for this to really deeply impact your life. And as the FEMA administrator said, there could be 5 or 6 million people without power. Could be a couple of days. It could be a couple of weeks. But either way, the infrastructure that has to be repaired from all of this is going to be so substantial. Take a look at this. We got a wave or a band of some of the outer bands moving right across Fort Myers, Florida. I want to point this out. Wow, this is in that dynamic area I was telling you about. Some of these cells right here have the potential to produce some tornadoes. So we're looking at perhaps hurricane force winds all along that western edge of Florida, from Marco Island to Naples to Cape Coral, Florida, and in towards Bradenton, Sarasota, Tampa. You have to remember this Bay Area, that water can really pile up quite a bit. So we'll be here. We've got live updates from the Weather Center every half hour. Back to you, Isa.
Thank you very much. It doesn't matter which way you slice it, does it, Karen? If east or west coast, it is a huge, huge hurricane, and we need to treat it with respect. Let's get more Derek Van Dam's Miami Beach. And Derek, you know, as we were just hearing there from Karen McGuinness, you have so many elements to think about, not only the storm surge, but also the power of these winds, the
All right, I seem to have lost Issa there for the moment. We'll get her back. Derek, can you hear me? Yeah, finish that thought. What do you make of what Issa was saying? Derek, can you hear me? Michael Holmes in Orlando here.
Michael, yeah. All right. Hey, Michael, I can hear you now. I understand we lost Issa. Listen. We are in Miami Beach, and we got to talk about the threats that we are facing right now. It's unbelievable. Tornado watch, flash flood watch, storm surge warning, and a mandatory curfew in this area alone. This is the real deal. You look around on our horizon, just in the past hour, we've had flashes of blue lights. In fact, I just saw one right now as I spoke. Transformers being blown. Obvious electrical problems taking place here in the Miami Beach region. There's already over 106,000 people being reported without power. Our power has been flickering on and off already. The threats here are real. Of course, we've seen the westward shift in the track. Everybody knows that, but that doesn't mean that Miami-Dade and Broward is in the clear. This storm still has several hours to go before it really ramps up to its most intense point. Now, we had the opportunity to talk to the Miami Beach mayor earlier today, Phil Levine, and he was talking about how the fire and police personnel here are on high alert, and they're still responding to calls and service requests. But the moment that there's another blue light flashing transformer in the background, the moment that the winds sustain 40 miles per hour, he's going to start pulling emergency personnel off the road, and anyone who decided to not take the evacuation order seriously and stayed put, they're on their own tonight. So they will not respond to those calls. You can imagine just how dangerous that could be as the night and the storm progresses. We are very close to the shoreline, about 1 block over. We do expect about 3 to 5 feet of coastal storm surge and inundation right along the Miami-Dade coastal area, specifically in Miami Beach. So lots of threats and lots of concerns here. The fire department has 4 stations based in Miami Beach specifically, but they've evacuated 3. They've left 1 in place because they believe that it's actually going to be above the floodplain once the coastal storm surge actually comes in. But that just shows you the limited personnel that will be on place tonight and into the day tomorrow when the storm becomes its strongest and the eye wall of Irma approaches the southern Florida Peninsula. Michael.
All right, Derek, thanks so much. Derek Van Dam there on duty for us. Our CNN contributor, Lieutenant General Russell Honore, joins us now here in Orlando. He commanded the military response to Hurricane Katrina in 2005. Great to have you and your expertise here. You handled a lot of logistics when it came to Hurricane Katrina. What have we learned then that will be put into action now?
Well, one thing, a lot of the pre-positioning is happening. FEMA leans forward more. We've established logistics bases. We've have storage centers. But the hard part will be search and rescue. The harder part will be sustaining communities, so maybe sometime entire cities, with the grid being down. And there's an old saying in the Army, you know, amateurs study tactics when we're trying to figure out where the storm goes. But there's got to be some people studying logistics, because this will be hard.
And the
resupply people and keep them fed, and to determine when you're going to start evacuating people, because you can't sustain them on a grid that's broken, that's underwater with no electricity.
And so